Hi, everyone. So today we're going to ask what's the biggest innovation challenge in medtech? Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live, a show about people, innovation, and tech. I'm Mazor, Kario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have a very special guest, Sina Kain, which is a friend of mine, a corporate innovator and entrepreneur. Hi, Sina.
Hello, Adi. Great to be here.
I'm so happy to see you here. And since we talked so much in the past, I know it's going to be exciting and interesting and insightful. So I'm very happy that we have this talk. And today, whoever sees us, we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. And we're going to talk about challenges that are connected to crises. And one more thing that we're going to say that we co-created a course together about voice strategy and design. So maybe next time we're going to talk about that one, right?
Absolutely. Looking forward to that.
Sure.
Lots to talk about with you.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I have to mention about Sina, that he has the most perfect English accent that makes mine look not that good, which is not good co-creating with a very perfect accent, but I'm going to do my best here. So let's start. What's the biggest innovation in medtech challenge as you see it?
You know, before I go on to that, they say someone with an accent, people should be very impressed with them. Why? Because it means they're learning another language. So whenever you hear someone have an accent, it's actually a badge of honor, because it means they're actually trying to learn another language and they're learning another language. So wear it with pride. Challenges in medtech and opportunities in medtech and innovations in medtech. I mean, there's so much to really talk about. To your first question, really, what we're seeing in medtech compared to other industries generally is that the medtech industry is very objective. If we think of fashion, if we think of food and drink, if we think of a whole variety of industries out there that are producing products and services, there's a lot of subjectivity that are tailored to different people in the market. So it could be a color, it could be a style, a design that can appeal to somebody, even though there's not some objective value to the product or service. With medtech, it's very, very different, because it either works and improves healthcare or it doesn't.
Right.
So there could be some subjectivity embedded within that in the design. And if you've got the same kind of product, you can try and add some subjective elements to it to make it more appealing to one user relative to another user. But the percentage, if you like, or the ratio of objectivity, subjectivity on the objective side is much harder in medtech.
Yeah, it's more scientific. You need to really prove what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. One more thing, I want to just stop you for a minute. We have people viewing us, and we have Anat Avni Papa, which said that my English is great, so it's very important to say that. Thanks, Anat.
I think it's more than great. So within that realm of objectivity, it means that as an innovator, you are really on one side more restricted, because you can't have the subjective creativity that you could in other industries. But at the same time, you're more focused, because you have these yes or no, black and white, or not as black and white, but more black and white than other industries, answers.
Sure.
So you have a much more focused process towards that. And that's produced a lot of the innovations that we see today in medtech.
But we know that in innovation in general, in crisis, most of the companies are going back to their core services and products. And we see increase only in industry of medical health, pharmaceuticals. How do you see that going forward? Will that continue, or just it's connected to the pandemic, or how you see that?
Yeah, I think when you're in a pandemic, there's no such thing as just doing what your core is, because in a pandemic, you have to be innovative in the way you're delivering care, you're delivering the products, delivering the service, because the whole paradigm has changed now. So there's always going to be some innovation within a pandemic, whether you consciously know it or not. But what I would say is, usually, as you said, within this kind of pandemic time, people like to go back to their core focus or core products. And I like to split, it's well known in innovation, split between exploration and exploitation. So exploitation is basically whatever your core product and service is, you exploit it as much as possible. You're very efficient, you improve, etc., to try and get it as efficient as possible with your current resources and capabilities. Whereas exploration is obviously going beyond your core products, looking at adjacent and transformational products and services. Within a pandemic time, you're right, exploitation is something that is more focused for a lot of companies, given the situation. However, it's delivering, the innovation really comes from the delivering and managing those resources and capabilities in a much more efficient way. That's where the innovation comes into. So there is definitely more exploitation, but I think inherent within a pandemic, you will have exploratory activities, given the fact that you have to deliver and communicate with your customer in a totally new way.
Yeah, you're right. You want to say hi to Pawan too? Great to see you, a friend from Google. How do you see corporate innovation in the post-COVID world?
So corporate innovation generally, I think, is something that hasn't got as much attention as it needs to. So before we go into COVID, it's something to realize that it's almost COVID has almost highlighted the need for corporate innovation strategy for companies, because at the end of the day, people associate corporate innovation with, sticky notes and different colors and some quick design thinking workshops, or getting someone with one big idea to take it from ideation to commercialization. But they're not looking at corporate innovation as something that deserves in and of itself a division, a team. So I think now with the pandemic, people are realizing that we can't just sit on our laurels, sit on our comfort space and keep churning what we were doing before out and expecting to survive. It's just the evolutionary model that we have as humans, that we have to adapt to changing circumstances, and it's survival of the fittest. And if you don't have that exploratory activity or that exploratory infrastructure within your company, pandemics like this really come to show you as being in the dark. So COVID, it presents two challenges, in the sense of, in my case, it presents challenge on the corporate innovation side, which I like to consult, but also on the medtech side, which I'm more involved in. On the corporate innovation side, we're losing physicality. And one of the core elements of innovation work is mentorship, ideation, the kind of incubator environment that you may have within a company. If you don't have that physicality, because we're all working remote, that gets impacted.
Yeah, for sure. It's harder to do these kinds of work, like everybody separated in his own office at home.
That's the thing. We can manage short term, but long term, if you want things to really develop in the most inclusive and diversified way, being in there, feeling the vibe amongst others within the ideation room, it's difficult to replicate that virtually as of now. On the medtech side, it's very challenging because, as you know, with medtech, there's regulatory burdens that are just so heavy, and you can come up with you can come up with the best idea in medtech, but if it doesn't get the regulatory approval, it's basically pointless. It's just an abstract concept. So,
I know it from the sides of startups. When I work with startups in Israel, we have many medical startups which are really, really great and great ideas, but they don't survive the years needed, to get through all these processes and the regulations they need to have. And that's why we don't have that much innovation in general in medical devices and in medical institutes and in medical, because it's so hard. You cannot just try something out and then we'll see if it works or not.
That's exactly it. At the end of the day, especially if you're a startup. So if we go out of the corporate innovation world, so out of the intrapreneurship innovation world, and go to the entrepreneurship side, which is having a startup, time is money. And the longer something takes to prove its efficacy and to get to proof of concept stage, the more money is required. And as a startup, the last thing you want to do is spend more money on time. You just want to get your product out there in the hands of users and iterate after getting user responses. So there's that challenge now, because the time frames for clinical trials, the time frame for proof of concept testing, all of those things have been extended now because of delays. Unless you're working within the medical devices for the COVID space, because a lot of these regulatory bodies have now put in some, fast-paced or quick course systems in place for those who are COVID specific.
Yeah, it's the systems, it's the resources, it's the money, it's the focus on something that everybody thinks is important, and I think everybody's like aimed to that. But still, I think that when we think about medtech in general, I think people thought about it something that is like less important, maybe in a sense, like it's more like governmental service. And now they see the importance of it to the world and how we live and to our daily life and the connection between the medical systems and to what we're doing right now, our daily life, which is so important.
100%. I mean, if we see healthcare as a whole, for countries' GDP spending, the largest bulk of that GDP spending is almost always on healthcare, because as we've got, increasingly aging populations, increased diagnostic, which means people are understanding that they've got more diseases, therefore they need more care. That GDP pie, more and more of it is being eaten by healthcare. And we sometimes think of this, in the back of our mind. We don't realize what a core element of our country's existence healthcare really is. But what's happened in healthcare is, at the initial stages of the medtech industry, it was very much improvement at any cost. As long as the medical device was improving upon the previous version of the medical device, money would flood in, government money would flood in as well, invest to just have the improvement. But now we're moving away from improvement to value. So the improvement has to be relative to the value it provides to saving money in the long term and to improving patient care, which again is to save money in the long term. So we've moved from improvement-based to really value-based, which just makes innovation, I would say, more challenging, but at the same time, it makes it more true and valuable, because you're really touching upon a pain point and not just a nice idea.
Yeah, I think it's connected to a move that you have in general, like in innovation, that in the past it was very related to the technology itself. So what the technology is doing. And now we're more talking about value proposition. What is the impact of what you're doing? What is the value in the market? Who will pay for it or use it, or how important it is? And when we're thinking about healthcare in general, it's not only to do a specific thing better. Maybe we can prevent some of the things that get to the usage of these medical devices or pharmaceuticals, so forth. So it really makes sense to see the impact of what you're saying. And I think it's connected to us seeing more the people and not the technology and not what we want to reach. Although most of the medical industry and the pharmaceuticals, for sure, they need to be to make money, and it makes sense. But we are trying to do it as best as we can within the context of a healthy life, I guess, to the end patients and so forth, which is so important.
That's exactly it. And it's really, it's following on from what you're saying with innovations, especially within healthcare. The analysis of every stakeholder involved is becoming so much more important, because previously most of the corporate innovation work for healthcare companies was very much focused on this product being doing what we want it to do, and it's being value providing for the patient and for the surgeon. But because the buyer, the hospital buyer, the healthcare provider, has such a more amplified role these days in the decision-making process, we now have to think, what is the purchaser thinking when they're looking at this value?
And of course,
we're seeing that the products that we're creating, it doesn't matter if they're efficacious and they're working in the short term. We have to think, how long is that buyer going to be there? Because this buyer is going to leave that healthcare provider in a few years and move somewhere else. And he or she wants to have in their CV that they've saved this amount of money for the hospital that they were working at, to kind of make their CV look better. So they're very much more cost focused in the space of 2 or 3 years. So we, as innovators for healthcare companies, have to look at, can we produce a product that can save the hospital money in 2 or 3 years, which is the lifespan of a healthcare buyer, so that when they go on to their next job, they can show these benefits. So there's so many things involved now that before they really weren't.
Yeah. I think that in general, there is this very big difference between a user and a client and a buyer. Like it's several things that you need to take into consideration, especially in these like kinds of products that you need to be aware of. So we all think about maybe the patient or the doctor who will use the device, or who is going to be the end user in that case. But we need to really think about the whole process. How do we market? How do we get to sell it? How do we convince people to take this product and not the other product? So it's the same in medical as in any other industry, but it's harder because it's so regulated, and the money is big, and the limitation is big, and all the legal stuff, and it's much more complex to do it this way. So what would be, like, if I'd asked you what would be the skills and capabilities needed for a change maker? How do you see that one?
So I think when we talk about change makers, digital transformers, innovators, intrapreneurs relative to entrepreneurs, the two main skills that I've tried to work on, and I've seen the success of it, is the ability to challenge assumptions. That's huge, because so many times during the innovation process, we move on to the next stage because, for all intents and purposes, of an assumption. And we don't really see that as an assumption. We just see it as a given. We think it's a given. So somebody who's able to really dissect why they've moved from one stage to the other and make sure they reduce as much as possible the assumption premium, I would say that's a huge feat. And it's difficult to do that because you have to be very self-critical, and you have to be able to be critical with your team as well to make sure that everything that someone is doing, or as much as they can, deduce physically, is not based on an assumption. So having that humility of challenging those assumptions, I think is critical. And the second thing that I've noticed is that you have to be very exploratory. As Carol Dweck said, the open mindset, where you're able to go and explore beyond what is in front of you. So the ability to think in abstract terms, the ability to think beyond the physical, I think that's key. A lot of innovation projects and corporate innovation initiatives by companies are focused on execution. So you go to your boss as an entrepreneur within a company with an idea. The first thing your boss says is put together a business case. Now, the business case is an execution document. It's not an exploration document.
Right.
But innovation is not about execution. Execution is a stage of it, but you have to have the exploration. So being able to have that exploratory mindset and being able to explain yourself to your bosses within that entrepreneurship model of a corporate infrastructure is key, because as much as they try to push you with an execution, you have to be able to, as a change maker, explain the benefits of exploration.
Yeah, I think it's connected to the way that we need to really lead the company. So a good leader would understand what are the challenges right now and still have a vision and where you want to get to. What's the aim that could be their future? And you have a few hypotheses and you're trying to check them out. And what you said in the beginning, that you need to really examine yourself again and again and to question yourself again and again in order to be sure, is connected to something that I heard from one of Amazon's leader I talked to in an innovation summit, I think 2 months ago. And one of the speakers was from innovation in Amazon. And he said that they are doing their best in order to devalidate what they're doing within their company as fast as possible and do it again and again, because they rather fail within the company and to really be sure that they're on the right direction before they're investing the whole money. So questioning yourself is a part of trying to fail, but in your conditions, and not fail within the market, which is much harder. So it's connected to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's always a hard balance, because so much of creative success is based on intuition, and assumption and intuition are very much tethered. But knowing what is something that isn't grounded in reality, because something could be intuitively correct, as long as it's grounded in reality. So knowing the distinctions between something grounded in reality through experience or something like that based on your intuition is very different to just an assumption that can be proved otherwise objectively. So knowing how to do that, I think is a real trait of a change maker.
But I think in general, when we think about processes of innovation, they need to be iterative and they need to be experimental. So we're trying to take what we know from science, in a sense, and to make small experiments again and again until we get to the right thing. So being experimental is very related to the fact that we are not sure, we're curious, we don't know, and we're trying to find the right solution through what we're doing. We're walking in a path that we're not sure in the end what will be the end result for sure. We're trying to aim for a specific domain, but we're not sure about how will we get there and exactly how will it be. So it's like the open-mindedness.
And I must say, one of the things that I talk about a lot and I mention a lot and people get a little bit surprised about it is how you get to that challenging assumption stage. One of the things that has helped me the most, believe it or not, is philosophy. Because at the end of the day, philosophy is about challenging all the assumptions we have about the world around us. So why we're here, what we're doing, what's the meaning, etc., etc. So studying philosophy, I think, is actually something I recommend to all people, everybody interested in delving into the world of innovation and change making, because it really teaches you the humility of not knowing all the answers and knowing to question everything that you're doing. So philosophy is definitely something I would recommend to a change maker.
Yeah, I think that thinking, questioning yourself in general is so important as a person, not only as a leader, because sometimes you have a thought or a gut feeling that you're really sure about, but if you just take a minute and think about what are the reasons that you're connected to the thought. Do you have any proof? Did you really test it out? Do you have like research connected to it? Like, how do you get to the answer of a very complex problem? You need to always explore. You cannot say, yeah, I know. Like I heard someone saying about the pandemic that whoever tells you that they know what's going to be with the pandemic and now it's rising, it's another wave and so forth, he knows nothing. As much as you know more, then you know what you don't know. Yeah, that's what.
Absolutely.
So could you tell us about a use case from medtech innovation that really is resonating with you?
Yeah, so I would say there's like a well-known example within medtech, and then there's one within COVID that I'd like to give. So a well-known example within medtech is obviously the innovation of surgical robots. So if we think about a lot of the challenges within the operating room for surgeons, when they're dealing with the site of a wound or the area of surgery on the body that they will be performing on, there are challenges with precision. There are challenges with consistency. If we look at, for example, a knee replacement surgeon, he or she will be very efficient on a Monday or Tuesday, and you may see that the infection rates or the inaccuracy rates start increasing as the week goes on. So there's that consistency issue. There's that accuracy issue. There's fatigue issue. There's precision issue. And as we move towards more and more minimally invasive surgery, where we're trying to not open up the whole body to try and get to a certain organ, we just want to specifically focus on one area. These things get difficult with humans because we don't have we are limited and finite in the things that we can do. So when robotic technology came out, in the world for other industries, healthcare was always going to be, or the operating room specifically, was always going to be an ideal use case for the surgical robotic innovation, because all of those criteria or challenges or pain points that I mentioned, such as accuracy, precision, consistency, fatigue, a robot doesn't fatigue. A robot can, meet those requirements. So we're seeing more and more the drive from medtech companies, especially within the operating room, to look at robotics to kind of not necessarily replace the surgeon, but augment the performance of the surgeon, which is why most surgical robots right now are not standalone automated entities. They are tools in which a surgeon behind the screen or behind the controller is able to control, but any errors or tremors that are within the surgeon hand, etc., are removed from the surgeon via the robot. So that's something that I've seen becoming more and more popular. It's a project I've been working on with a company that I'm working with full time, Dasuta Medical. But within medtech as a whole, we're seeing more and more. Actually, your middle name, Mazor, one of the
Yeah.
leading
Yeah.
robotic companies that just got
Yeah.
acquired a couple of years ago,
It's
is
health in
another
Hebrew.
example.
Yeah,
It's
Mazor, health
yeah,
in Hebrew.
there
Yeah,
you
you're
go.
right. I think that in general, in all my projects that I've done, I always really love to do the medical projects because I really love to go into. I went in a few times to a surgical room and see everything like going there, and you feel like you're doing something so important, which is
Yeah.
like this is the best feeling ever, that you feel that you are taking your talents to something which is so important. And in general, I think that robots, most people think that like in a few years, they will replace us everywhere. I've seen someone from Boston Dynamics in one of the conferences that I had lots of conferences in the past. Now I don't see them that much. And do you know the videos showing that the robot is fighting, and he's doing flip-flops?
Absolutely.
And so he talked about that one because he was one of the creator of that specific model. And he said that the team that created these robots are the one that laugh the most to the thinking that robots will control us, because they know how much work was invested in order to create this specific move, and in order for that to work, which is only a specific scheme of moving. And we're afraid of it, but mainly most robots are helping, and they are tools for humans, and they are not like standalone. They're not doing the surgeon. They're not this instead of the surgeon, and the surgeon goes and drinks coffee on the side. It's like not most
Exactly.
people. This is what they think.
Yes,
And
it's enhancing, not replacing.
Right. In general, I think that most people, they're a bit afraid of maybe AI and robotics because it's frightening. But in most cases, as we know it, AI is helping doctors and helping professionals, and it's not replacing. And in some cases, it really is. Like there are several cases that AI is replacing people, but it's very specific. It's not as people think, that it's so pervasive and
Yeah.
danger. And
Yep.
the second example you said is connected to the COVID.
Yes. So we've obviously seen this drive from medtech companies within the COVID era to see what can they do, both on a corporate side as well as, innovators within a startup world, coming up with solutions to a lot of the challenges in COVID. So there's one example which is close to my heart because of my, an hour love for voice and chatbots.
Yeah.
ClearStep, which is a chatbot company, which has created this chatbot interaction for users who have COVID-19 symptoms. So it sounds like just a normal symptom checker, but it's able to ask the questions which not only determine your health condition, but to see based on the local symptoms in your area, whether what percentage of it is likely to be COVID, what it's not to be, what percentage is it not to be. So we've got there almost, I would say, the kind of innovation where it's taking different existing pieces and putting them together for a solution. Because people think that innovation is just coming up with something completely brand new that has never been heard of. But Ferrari wasn't that. Ferrari was taking existing entities and putting them together. The unique, in Hebrew we say chidush, the unique innovation wasn't the actual things that they created, it was how they put them together. And I think the ClearStep example is a great one because they took chatbot technology that already existed, symptom checking that already existed, getting information from your locality already in existence, and putting it together to provide some sort of peace of mind for patients or humans who are concerned about having COVID.
Right. I think that in general, we know that voice is growing because people are close at home and they're using it more. And the fact that people don't want to touch some of the surfaces, is easier to use your voice. I thought you'll give an example of how can we check the breathing of a person while he speaks, and it could tell you if he's breathing right and he has any kind of breathing symptoms. So this is what the example that comes to my mind. So could you tell us what's the most surprising thing you learned about innovation after years of experience?
The most surprising thing is how so many companies think of innovation as that one big idea. They don't see it as a series of ideas that you're exploring to then determine which one sticks on the wall. And there's this corporate innovator who I'm a big fan of, Tendai Vicky, and he says, this conception of that one big idea is very much as a result of the educational system that we were raised upon. Because if you remember the exams that we used to do, you had 4 or 5 questions and you've got to pick one. So it wasn't like you could do all of them and then the best one would be the one that it would get rated or marked. You had to make a decision. This is my one big essay.
Yeah,
And
that's that's the only right answer. We call it American test. I know how you call it, but it's like only one, and they try to make it like very close to one another, and then you make mistakes. Yeah, I remember.
That's the multiple choice questions, but this is also about essays. Like there could be 4 different topics that you can write on, and they can all be right. But the pressure is on just picking that one. You cannot, kind of do a variety. So his theory is that mentality of that one big essay, that one big idea, has really impacted innovation for us, where everyone thinks of how can I just get that one entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial idea and then be a success. But so my biggest surprise was how many companies actually embedded with that mindset of let's just put all our resources towards this one transformational idea when we're doing innovative work. So beyond the exploitation work, our exploration work will be very much, focused on just one big idea. So slowly through a lot of the experiences that I had, I realized that the model that was working was surprisingly the model which is, you've got an innovation budget, but instead of releasing the funds towards one project, it's releasing the funds towards a series of projects, and at different stages you release more and more. So what happens is, as each project is moving on to the next stage, the risk is reducing, therefore the release of funds is occurring at a stepped rate according to the de-risking of that given project. So that was really surprising for me, because for me, I just thought, like everyone else did, one big idea, give me the money, let me go ahead and do it. But that stepped process was something that addressed that issue.
Yeah, I think that bigger companies are building what they call a portfolio. They see themselves as a VC, that they want to invest in different initiatives and in different projects, and they're doing several of them. But I think that the fact that people are thinking only one-sided. I wrote a book. I'm finished already. It's called the Harness the Wind of Change, and I talk about growth mindset there, and the way you think and the way you perceive what you're doing, and how good are you doing it, and how exactly is needed, and the strictness of your mind is very much attached to your success as a leader, as an innovator leader, which is just to think about things as not like one-sided, like black and white. You could say, okay, like maybe this one I was not exactly sure, and maybe we even failed in this specific project, but how can we learn better in the next time? Or you could say, yeah, we failed, we don't know how to innovate, maybe we just need to buy a startup and that's it. That, like, how do you perceive the way of what you're doing as a continuing learning process, and not as like, this is what needs to be done, and if I get there, great, if not, it's I don't know how to do it. It's like, it's not my stuff.
Yeah, which is why I say a corporate innovation strategy or a corporate innovation department should be like Benjamin Button, the movie, which is that the more it lives, the younger it gets, in the sense that the more it goes on and attempts to delve into these innovation projects, the more it's learning and the more it's improving as an entity beyond every project. So it's getting younger, it's getting more innovative, it's learning more, it's gleaning more observational data, and therefore your innovation department will consistently get better and better and better. So we need to think of it. We think of products as the more we use them, the more ragged and worn out they become. But we need to think of a corporate innovation team or a corporate innovation initiative as a product that the more it goes through things, the younger it gets, the more beautiful it gets, the more innovative and outward looking it becomes.
Yeah, I love this metaphor. I think that in general, to think about innovation as something that you grow into and something that you learn how to do. And once you're getting better and better, you know how to do it in faster and even in cases like a very big change, like a crisis, like what we have right now, it's still working and you don't freeze in your and go back to your core. You know that it's going to work and you know how to do the processes in order to create something. And we all know that currently lots of companies need to create something new because the market has changed and their clients has changed and the buyers have changed and they need to think differently and to give different solutions and answers to that. So if they are not innovating, they are at risk, especially in specific industries that we know that got hurt really bad during this crisis, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why the customer journeys have changed. In this COVID era, the customer journey has changed. So the responsibility, really, the onus on companies is to look at this changing customer journey and seeing how can you be innovative in each of those stages: pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, and the interfaces that existed between the company and the customer have changed. So innovation is part and parcel of this new changing customer journey, and making sure that you as a company are ready for those changes in the most efficient way, which is why I'm glad you've done the course.
Yeah, we have. So we're almost done. So how could people hear more from you and contact you and ask you questions maybe?
Yeah, so I've got my website, sinakahen.com,
Yeah.
sinakahen.com. So you can reach out to me on there. And then, of course, on LinkedIn, happy to connect with people from all different types of industries to share thoughts and ideas. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
feel free to reach out.
Sure. I recommend everyone to ask questions, Sina, because it's always a pleasure talking to you, Sina.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Likewise.
coming. And it's been so much fun as always. We should do another one about voice. We'll do that in a few weeks or
With
months.
pleasure. With pleasure.
Sure. And I'd like to thank you for viewing and listening to this episode. And if you like it, you're welcome to try it and to hear more from Invincible Innovation or visit our website, www.invincibleinnovation.com. See you. Bye-bye.